Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson, and before I get to our guest here, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. We greatly appreciate it. We have Bret Cowan on the show. He's a musical member of the band Susano, and we really cannot thank him enough. I mean, we've had so many of his other friends on the show. We've had Zach Mendoza and Cody Tyler Hale, but now we have Bret on the show. Bret, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Absolutely. So why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on what inspired you to get into music?
All right. Well, when I was in the fourth grade, I saw this band concert, and there was like, flutes and clarinets and trumpets and stuff. And I thought it was just like the coolest thing in the world. And so naturally, I picked the most masculine instrument to learn, and I learned the flute.
Yes.
And
jazz flute?
Jazz. Oh, I played jazz flute too.
Yes.
Jazz flute too. But I played flute, and basically, not to toot my own horn, but I was pretty decent at it. And then when I got into high school, people started giving me a bunch of crap for being the only guy in the flute section. So naturally, I learned a different instrument because that's the way I roll. And I learned guitar, and basically, I just fell in love with the instrument, and I just got into music, and guitar is like a big part of my life now. So
now, did you learn anything from the flute that applies to learning the guitar? Did having that background in the flute help you in any way?
Oh, I think so. Yeah. I think having that classical background really taught me a ton about theory and like how to read standard notation and like chord structure. And then I would say, I mean, people don't really talk about this a lot, but I think it improved my dexterity a little bit. But yeah, not to bag on my experience as a flute player too much, but it did help. It definitely helped. It's definitely
it's definitely one of those instruments where it's like, I don't care if you think that anything's girly or not. I mean, it's like it's an instrument. No matter what you play, it's an instrument.
And now of course. I mean, now I think that for sure.
Yeah.
But
no, believe me. Yeah, I was, in my teens at one point in my life too. So I totally understand all that stuff where people just say like, oh yeah, there's the one guy flute player. Yeah, let's give him a little bit of crap. Yeah, I get that 100%. But at what point did you decide to get in with a group of other guys and sort of form a band? How long into your process did that take?
So basically, growing up, my dad was like a super hardcore classic rock elitist kind of guy. A lot of dads are like that, And so when I was in like middle school, early high school, that was all I listened to. And then my friends, like that was all their parents let them listen to. So now like we just formed a really cheesy kind of bad classic rock band when I was in like a freshman or eighth grade. And basically it just went from there, and it was just pretty bad. And then eventually, like, my friends were all into, like, metalcore and all that stuff back in, like, the 2012, 13, when it was, like, huge. Mm-hmm. And then I just kind of got into more, like, heavier stuff, and then eventually kind of got into prog gear stuff, and now here I am, so...
I was going to say my dad was kind of the exact opposite, where he was more into like Heart and other bands like that when I was growing up. So like I got like the full, it was really weird. And like he liked ABBA and stuff like that. And I was like, I'm surprised. I mean, and he's straight. I mean, to this day, he's still straight. So I don't know. So I got the full experience. Like Little River Band was another one where he liked that. And I was like, okay.
Oh, my dad loves Little River Band.
I was like, I know, but like he like, it's ridiculous. So yeah, I got the full, but yeah, I know like that. So what was your guys' go-to songs that you really played if you were doing classic rock?
Oh man. Eagles, basically any of like the top 10 Eagles songs. We probably played all of them. I mean, later on when I was like a junior or senior, we moved into like 90s stuff, but that was about as recent as it got because we just had this like pop sucks philosophy, which I grew out of for sure. Yeah. But yeah, I guess that kind of forced me to learn guitar, like, because I wasn't going to get into pop or anything because I thought it was dumb. So. Oh yeah.
And for me, this is actually a funny backstory because you were mentioning the Eagles. My main inspiration for starting this podcast was I saw the Eagles documentary on Netflix. That's it's like the 3-hour-long thing. That was one of the greatest documentaries I've ever seen. Like I was so inspired to do that. I was like, I gotta start going and getting something started with my life. And I was really interested in bands, like when they were talking about the interview. So that's literally the inspiration. And about a month later, I started this podcast after I bought all the equipment and got everything set up. And I started with bands, and I still do bands to this day. Like we have you right here, right now. But literally, yeah, that Eagles documentary. I highly recommend everyone go and check it out. It's
really inspiring.
Amazing. Yeah. And just, it's one of those things too, where I was a huge Eagles fan, but you just don't understand the scope of how many good songs they had. When they go through song.
and different eras and like all kinds of stuff.
They really are America's rock band, basically, where you just, I mean, it's just so, just all the stuff that they went through, just to live that life once. I was like, okay, yeah, I could live 100 lifetimes and never accomplish what those guys did. Absolutely.
And the way the music world is now, it'd be hard to replicate that kind of experience as a rock band. I don't even think you could do it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, and plus, another huge thing is that rock doesn't exist as much as it did back then too, which is another horrible thing. And I normally ask that later on, but I'll get that started right now. What do you think is probably the big reason why rock isn't as mainstream as it was? And I mean, a lot of people say like hip hop or stuff like that, but are there any other reasons that you specifically think why rock doesn't get the airtime that it used to?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Well, I think there are a lot of factors. Oh man, why isn't rock as big as it used to be? Well, I think that in the music world, like, I mean, jazz used to be the big thing that, or like even before that, like just music has gone through tons of different eras, and then blues, and then the birth of rock. And it just kind of, as much as I hate to say it, there's just kind of a natural progression of popularity, like things going in and out of style. And, I think with the advent of, all this production technology and stuff like that, people have gravitated towards that. And popular music, in my opinion, has almost always been about the vocals. I mean, save for like EDM, stuff like that. But it's just like not as much about the real aspect of rock music. Like it's more about just purely about how it sounds and whatever production can get them there. And I don't know. I think it might make a comeback. I think that real instruments are kind of coming back, but I don't know. That's a good question. That's a good question. I don't think there's one answer to that.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I just think though too, also with today's culture, you're not going to be able to get the same type of rock that you had back then. I mean, definitely if you listen to some of the lyrics and some of these songs that you listen to like back in the 70s, 80s, you're like, yeah, that stuff doesn't fly nowadays anyway. So that's just, it's going to be it's going to be an absolute different version of rock where, I mean, yeah, all these songs, I mean, I could get into that, but yeah, it's just, it's ridiculous what those guys were able to get away with back then with a lot of their songs. Music videos especially are another thing where you're just like, oh, yeah, that's not working out nowadays. But yeah, I agree with you. And just, I mean, hip hop is sort of taking it over, but I mean, hip hop is slowly starting to, I think, sort of get a little bit lower and lower. So we'll see what really takes its place. And I really hope that rock makes a comeback. I mean, there are a lot of bands that are up and coming.
Yeah. And I think that almost, I mean, on one hand, it's a bad thing that rock isn't as popular as it used to be. Cause I mean, obviously I wish I could just turn on the radio and hear a new rock band, and that would be really cool. But, as someone who is making music, it's almost kind of a cool thing. I mean, on one hand, like with production technology and everything, like the market's way oversaturated in a world where it's not going to get any radio time. So that's a big problem. But the positive on that part is that like people aren't just going to like you because you're on the radio. People are going to go, if you're good, they go out of their way to support you. And like, I think that with my last couple bands, like the following was really loyal because it's like they know that rock isn't big. And that's just kind of one of the nice little side effects.
So what is your history with bands? What was the first band that you got into? What was the name of that band?
That band was called Wild Card. It was pretty sick. It was... Yeah, that was the one where we just played a lot of Eagles songs. And eventually... we thought that Weezer was still up to date and cool, so we started playing Weezer, and then Red Hot Chili Peppers. And then after that, I kind of took a step back, and that was when I was really getting into like Dance Gavin Dance and like Circa Survive and a lot of like the post-hardcore kind of sad bands. And then so I tried doing a thing on my own, and then that became a band called Bear Witness. And that just kind of fizzled out. And then I joined another band, and that was actually Vita Culta. And then that just kind of fizzled out. Now we're Susano. And that's just, that's just the world of music. You go from band to band till something works. Yep.
So now what is the reason behind the naming of the band? Is there a certain inspiration behind it? Is there a backstory for it?
So I wouldn't say we're all weeaboos because we're not, but Susano is the Japanese god of storms. And I don't know, the word just sounded cool, Susano. But apparently there's a character or some, I haven't kept up with Naruto, but my bandmates love Naruto, and I guess there's Susano in there. That's probably why they really like it. I had no idea, but yeah, it's the Japanese God of Storms. It just sounded cool, I guess.
Yeah, that's awesome. So when you guys were forming a band, I mean, I know there's a lot of other bands that you've been in, like Vita Culta. We've had some Vita Culta guys on, but when it came down to this band, was there any discussion at all as to what genre you guys really wanted to, focus all your energy in, or did you guys already have, the knowledge ahead of time?
So naturally with the three people from Vita Culta, I mean, we already kind of had a vibe, but the direction we're going, we're definitely going to be an instrumental band. Mm-hmm. And that's probably the way it's going to stay. We might have vocals in some songs, but, we're all kind of inspired by really similar instrumental bands. Like I really like Polyphia, for example, Intervals, Chon, Pliny is like my go-to. He's like one of my favorite guitarists of all time. And then, Cody really likes, Angel Vivaldi. And then we're just kind of taking a lot of these the modern guitar gods, if you will. And then we're making something that's not quite metal. It's not really like heavy, but it's got kind of jazzy chords and cool solos. And it's like, we're still kind of navigating that right now, to be honest. Mm-hmm. But I think with the more releases and as we write more as a band, we'll really get that solid. But we definitely have a direction, and that's just kind of like leady, kind of the guitar takes the place of the vocals kind of deal. And
it's just a huge thing of trial and error too, just finding out what works best for you.
Absolutely.
And when it comes down to writing the songs or coming up with the melodies, who in the band is really the main driving force behind that?
It's mostly me and Cody. Mm-hmm. For the music video we released, Music Stop But You're Still Dancing, that was actually a track that he had written before joining the band. Oh. And we'd all just really liked it. And I just played rhythm for that one. But in the later releases, we're probably going to be kind of like 50-50, taking turns. The next single we're going to release is actually one that we wrote prior to him joining. And then the EP we're going to release after that is everything just purely collaborative.
Everyone go and check out that music video. They're all dressed in Powerpuff Girls outfits. And it's really, really, it's an interesting thing to watch. I'll leave a link to that down below. I highly, highly, highly recommend that everyone goes and checks that out. So when it comes down to your music, I mean, with instrumental bands, it's just so fascinating because Vita Culta was probably one of the only other, I probably had only one other just instrumental band. But when it comes down to that, I mean, because like I say, when you have instrumental bands, you don't have the vocals, so the audience members really don't know what to be focused on. They don't know whether to look at the the drummer, the bass player, the lead guitarist. How important is that for you to have each band member sort of have their own distinctive style, so that you can really just get that out of each song?
So I think that when you don't have vocals, the compositional structure, how you build songs, becomes way more evident because you don't, like you said, you don't have a vocalist to distract you. Mm-hmm. So then there's a lot more emphasis on the relationship between the different instruments. So so the way for the way we work, and the way I think, most bands would work is that, the bass and the drums almost always have a groove together. And then the guitars are more lean towards being the melody and the chord backing. It's just kind of a lot of the time, I think that even if bands are really diverse, just that different instrument roles always kind of lend themselves to different parts of the composition. But yeah, I would say that even though the guitars do tend to take the spotlight, in instrumental bands, in my experience, fans of instrumental bands can always name each member of the band because that's their time to shine as musicians because you don't have a vocalist. Mm-hmm. So it's the drummer has his own unique style and the bassist has his own unique style, and everybody's vibe that they bring into the band just becomes so much more powerful and obvious in an instrumental band. I think that's one of the great things and one of the reasons why we do it, just because it's really
probably
cool.
My favorite thing about instrumental bands is that when you guys are writing songs, you don't have lyrics sort of tell people what the song is about, where every song is really open for interpretation. You could have a song where someone thinks it's could be a happy-go-lucky song, and another person could think oh, this is a song that's really just about sadness. It's really just open to the audience's interpretation. When you guys are coming up with songs, do you actually have a specific vision for what the song might really be about to you, or is it one of those things where you're just we're going to come up with a song and then people can think about it what they want to think about it?
Definitely the second one. Once in a while when I write a song, it'll be because I'm in a specific mood, mm-hmm. or if it's just kind of a topic. But I don't really ever. And some people do it this way. For me personally, I don't write a song and think about a story. I kind of think about what sounds good, but I know other people, you know, imagine a story and go with it. And I think that creates really great music. But for me, I just kind of look at it more as like, this sounds good with this part, this sounds good with this part. And naturally, I think the story then just tells itself in a way, you know?
Absolutely. And probably my most important question, my favorite question to ask bands that I have on the show is, what is that feeling like for you performing live? Because a lot of people never get to experience really that thrill, that high of being on stage and performing songs that you come up with yourself, you've practiced hundreds upon hundreds of times, and you're finally able to play them in front of people. What is that experience like for you? How can you describe that, what that feels like?
Okay. So there's normal, regular life Bret, and then there's on the stage Bret. Like I have Beyonce has Sasha Fierce.
Yep.
I also have Sasha Fierce.
You trademarked it from her?
I think she definitely has already. I need to come up with something that's close, but not the same.
Yeah.
But it's an unbelievable feeling to me. There's nothing that replicates it literally at all. It's just like this like energy and this like feeling that it just feels, and it feels like you just belong there when you're up there sometimes. Like if you know what you're doing, you're just prepared, like it's just all your worries are gone. And it just feels great. At least that's for what it is for me.
Oh yeah. And I've been,
euphoric feeling.
Oh yeah. And I've had so many people come on and talk about it's like a drug unlike any other. I mean, it's one of those just things where I always tell, like I was a pitcher in baseball. So I kind of experienced something like that when it was just like me and the batter, where it was just, you kind of get that feeling where I always tell people, like, if you can experience that just once in your life, just that feeling, it's so worth it, because you feel alive. I mean, you feel like you have a purpose too. It's such a great feeling. And what was the first show that you ever played with in any band, and how did that go?
See, that was a completely different experience. See, I was a freshman in high school, and it was our talent show.
Oh, yep.
And we played Hotel California. Yep. And I mean, I had been playing guitar for like 2 or 3 months. And so it was really bad. And like we were like crazy nervous, like to the point where we all wore aviator sunglasses. Like it was the cringiest thing. Like we all wore aviator sunglasses, so we didn't see the crowd very well. And we just kind of stood there and tried to make sure we played our parts right, but we didn't really. But I mean, it's changed a ton since then. It's like now it's like my favorite thing in the world. I wouldn't trade it for anything. But
what was the hardest thing about guitar? What was the hardest thing about learning the guitar for you when you started learning that instrument as opposed to playing the flute? I mean, what was the hardest thing for you to pick up?
From a technical standpoint, definitely syncing up the right hand, the left hand. That was my big thing. That's like, I mean, that people still struggle with that. Even now, it's probably my biggest weakness as a guitar player. But from a mental standpoint, it's like on the flute, I mean, you have like, we would have band rehearsal every single day. I took lessons, like you had all this structure. And then the second you move to guitar, you know, even if you take lessons, it's all on you to learn it. And it's getting over those mental roadblocks of like hearing someone on the radio or hearing someone in a song that's like way better than you and not wanting to quit. That was my hardest thing. Like, like when I listened to Animals as Leaders for the first time, I was like, well, I'm done. Like, I don't want to play guitar anymore.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things too, where a lot of people don't realize, like, those guys started out where you're at, like right now at that moment. I mean, like, no one ever picked up, I mean, unless you're like unless you're like Edward Van Halen, where you just pick up a guitar and you're just like a god at it, like magically. I mean, it's like, that's like a 1 in a million talent. But other than that, I mean, everyone starts out playing, you know, shows like that, like either talent shows or stuff like that. I mean, everyone starts out that way. And that's why you got to support your local music or up and coming musicians too, because you never know. You could have the next Rolling Stones or the next Beatles out of this whole crowd of people. So it's just so important to do. And now, what is your go-to thing to do before show? I mean, we've had so many bands for pre-show traditions. Do you guys either, you know, like a lot of bands I like to, you know, have a lot of drinks, or they like to, you know, relax, you know, stretch. Do you guys have a tradition for any of your bands that you've been in? Have you guys had any traditions of what you guys like to do pre-show, or do you guys just sort of like to just wing it when you get there?
For me, I don't ever play drunk, ever. I have 1 beer. That's it. I have 1 beer, sometimes 2, but usually just 1. And then I just go on, and that's it, really. I don't, I mean, I have friends who like eat a banana before, I guess, because the potassium or something. but no, I have one beer and I just go on, and it's been fine so far. So,
and I guess like being in an instrumental band, the guitarist can sort of take over as sort of the lead singer because it's probably one of the most recognizable things for people to look at. Do you ever feel that extra added pressure when you're playing on stage, knowing that a lot of people probably are looking at you as opposed to if you guys had a lead singer?
A little bit, yeah. You stick out a ton because it's kind of the guitar. Usually, it's the guitarist's responsibility to bring that melody. And so you're right. You know that people are watching you and listening to you. But I try to take that opportunity and see it as a great thing, because it's like, well, I know these people are listening to what I have to say. And it's my chance to really show, like, express my art and share it with all these people. Initially, that was something that was really scary, but now I think it's just an awesome opportunity, and I love every minute of it, really.
And when you're,
but it's still scary.
Oh, yeah. I can't. I mean, I've done karaoke a couple of times, and that for me is scary enough. Yeah. That for me is scary enough. I mean, my legs were shaking one time when I was doing it, and I sang "Take Me Home Tonight," but I did a great ass version of it. The guy there said it was the best. Guys there said it was the best version you ever heard. Now, granted, I mean, I was really sloppy that night, so it was, I don't want to ever see if there's any video recording of it. But when you're performing live, does time seem to speed up, or does it seem to stand still, or can it be sort of a mixture of both?
Definitely speed up. Definitely speed up. It feels like it just goes by in a heartbeat. But then, like, I'll see like a recording of it, and it's like, that was like 40 minutes. Yeah, that felt like 5 minutes. Like it.
Yeah, I get that with these podcasts all the time too. So I definitely know what you're talking about. You just look at the time, you're like, oh, holy shit, we've been talking for this long. Like, wow. Yeah. I totally. And speaking of podcasts, you sort of have come up with your own podcast, and we'd like to, we love to help promote everyone that we have on the show.
Thank you,
what is your podcast name, and what do you guys basically talk about?
It's called the Two Naive Musicians Podcast, and it's about me and my friend Brian Halverson. I live in the more of the band world, where you make a band, you do shows. He's more in like the studio musician world, where he kind of he'll play for like pit orchestras, and like people will hire him to do like play in their recordings and stuff at studios. And mostly it's about just like what it's like to be in that world, and then just things that we learn and pick up, and we just kind of share that with people. It's kind of more of a it kind of documents our time as musicians, and it also is like kind of an instructional thing at the same time. But
so basically what I'll say to people is like, this is sort of a watered down version of what they'll talk about. So if you want to get more into like the music part of it, if you're really into that music, go and check these guys out. I'll leave the links down below for everything in their podcast. And I mean, it really sounds really interesting. I will definitely myself go and check out a few of those episodes after we're done recording here. But again, when it comes down to also that performing, are there any ways that you sort of like to psych yourself up for a show, or is it one of those things where you've just gotten so used to performing on stage where it does make it easier?
Oh, I mean, I love it, but like I said, I mean, it's also really scary. Still, so what I do, like I said, I have one beer, and then like to get myself into it, like it's not necessarily pre-show thing, like it's just kind of at some point before we play during the night, I always warm up for at least like 5-10 minutes. And then I just kind of use that time to really like zone in and like get my hands all nice and warm. And that's really all I do. Yeah. I might have to do more to get that out, but
oh yeah, we've had, I mean, it's just, it's everyone has their own niche where it comes to what they do to prepare themselves and get ready. And what has been your favorite show that you've ever played at? What has been your favorite venue? And was there ever a moment where you're just like, oh my God, this is amazing?
One time, are you familiar with Jared Dines?
Jared Dines. I am not, but is it a venue?
No. Oh, Jared Dines, he's a guy on YouTube. He does like top 10 drummers that do this.
Oh, like, yeah. I've actually seen those videos. Yeah.
Yeah, he always wears like a backwards hat. Yep. Blonde hair. Yeah, so he has a band. They're called Rest and Repose. And they were touring around here in the Salem, Portland area. And we actually got to open for him, which was pretty cool. And we got to open for him, and we got to meet him, and there's this guy named Joseph Stalin. We got to meet him too.
Joseph Stalin?
Yeah. And yeah, so we got to get to know him, and that was super cool. That was an awesome experience. That was with Vito Colta though. That wasn't with Susano. Yeah. We're still starting out with Susano.
Oh yeah, everything's that is actually really, really cool. And now when most people think about, the Pacific Northwest, a lot of people still have that feeling of grunge music kind of, or just that sort of genre. Is it hard to sort of not be in a band that has the genre where a lot of people associate where you're from in? Is that sort of been hard for you guys?
It's actually kind of interesting that you mentioned that. I've always kind of wondered how other people view the Pacific Northwest. But as far as Portland's music scene, there are a lot of metal bands. There are a lot of, but I see from where I live in Salem and like where I grew up in Washington, like the vibe that the stereotype Portland always got was that it was like an indie place.
Yep.
And so playing there, I mean, well, if you say you're a band from the Pacific Northwest, in my experience, people automatically associate that with like indie music.
Yeah. I'd say like more of the Seattle thing is kind of still the grunge thing, where if you say that, they're like, oh yeah, grunge. Because I myself am a huge Nirvana, Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam guy, where that's just a whole. But yeah, indie too is just a huge thing too, and a lot of people are like, oh, they must be hipsters or stuff like that too. If you say
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Just like I saw Portlandia is one of my favorite shows. Watching that,
I mean, that show's really accurate. It's like the most accurate show.
I watched that and I was like, because I've been to every area in the country besides the West Coast and Pacific Northwest, and I've always wanted to go. I mean, whenever I think of the Pacific, whenever I think personally, I always think about like Twin Peaks or stuff like that with all the woods, and it's one of those areas where my brother, he was a professional baseball player and he played minor leagues in the Pacific Northwest, and he always said like, you have to come here. It's one of the most beautiful places that you'll ever be. So I've always wanted to go there. So I'm definitely going to be coming there at least once, because it's one of those things where I really got to see. But also being in that area, where it can, how does that area sort of affect, does it ever affect at all your music, what you guys make? Because when you live in a scene that can be just so scenic or so beautiful, does that ever inspire you guys when it comes to melodies?
I mean, like I said, my first band was almost kind of like an emo, well, not my first band, my other band, it was Bear Witness, the one I was in before Vito Culto, was kind of an emo-ish band. I mean, the fact that it's always raining here probably added to it. I was going to say that. It makes you sad. But otherwise, I don't know. That's a good question. It doesn't necessarily come to mind when I'm writing songs, but I mean, you never know what affects you, your environment. We're all products of our environment. So, I mean, who knows? I mean, I
think it's one of those things that too, where like if you did go to a different place and you'd be like, oh well, because like I'm from Minnesota, where I mean it is very hilly and a lot of woods, kind of like Seattle, but nothing near that. But like whenever I drive to go visit my grandparents in Nebraska, all it is just flat plains. The most boring thing ever. It's just one big flat plain. There might be like a 100-foot tall hill every once in a while, but that's about it. And you're like, wow, I'd be depressed if I lived here. Like I would have no inspiration to do anything. So it's just just that I think the environment does play a huge part. But now we go to our personal favorite part of the podcast, my personal favorite and the audience part, the little 5 questionnaire, where I'm going to ask Bret here about 5 questions, and we're going to see how his answers stack up to everyone else musically that we've had on the show. So for our first question, out of all the songs in the history of music that have ever been written, what is one song that you personally wish you had come up with yourself?
Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yes.
Definitely Bohemian Rhapsody. I feel like that's probably not an uncommon answer.
It's probably like our second favorite or our second most popular.
Well, and not just because it's really good, but it's like they got away with that song being like 6 minutes.
Oh yeah,
like it was not like a radio friendly, like it wasn't like a radio hit like type of song, but it was like wildly successful.
And this was back when you still had like shades of like kind of what the Beatles laid down, where you'd have your 2.5 minute songs, and it would just be really quick, really fast, get to the point. We're gonna put as much music onto this as possible so we can play as many songs. And yeah, have you seen the new movie?
Yeah, I haven't yet, but that's someone told me about that specific part, and it just reminded me of just like the impact that song had, and it was just crazy.
Yeah, so. I haven't seen it myself, but my little brother's seen it twice, and he told me, he said, yeah, I'd go see it a third time with you. So I really want to see it. I mean, Queen is just they're one of those, like one of those bands I can count on my finger when it comes to some of the most influential music of all time. It's just I can't get enough of that. So now, out of all the artists that have ever lived, dead or alive, doesn't matter, you can pick either one. If you could perform live with any person for one show, who would it be?
Oh man. Ooh. Man. Okay. Well, this is a cheesy answer, but he was a pioneer. So dead, it's got to be Jimi Hendrix.
Yep.
Just because like he was like one of the first guitar heroes that ever really like he just broke through and created a whole new thing. Like, and to have played with him would have meant that I got to be with that guy. That would have been wild. But alive, definitely Pliny. Because just the guitar wise, he's like one of my biggest inspirations, and he's also a pioneer in my opinion. he kind of brings like Alan Holdsworth and like old like progressive like jazz kind of guys into the metal world, and it's just this crazy thing. So probably Jimi Hendrix or Pliny.
The only thing about doing, like, if I were to choose, like, Jimi Hendrix, the only bad thing, though, is that, like, I wouldn't be able to play a stroke with him because he would embarrass me way too much on stage. Like, I wouldn't even try. Yeah. I wouldn't even try to keep up with him. I would just literally just point to him and be like this. I'd be like, this, everyone. Just, like, the entire time. Just, like, everyone look at Jimmy. Because, I mean, it's like, yeah, he's just amazing in and of. But, yeah, that's definitely one of those that, me personally, I mean, I'd probably, you know, I don't know. I haven't answered that question in a while, so I don't know. I'll think about that and then I'll get back to at the end. But now,
yeah, please do.
Absolutely. So now, for our third question, out of all the venues on the planet, if you could perform at any venue, where would you play?
This is probably also a cheesy answer, but Wembley Stadium.
Ooh, no, that's not.
Just because
that's the second time we've heard that answer, and we've had like 60 music guests, and that's only the second time. So believe me, it's not cheesy at all.
Hey, yes, or Carnegie Hall. You probably get that one a lot.
Okay, that's actually like might be the first time we've heard that. I might have to go back and look over things because but believe it or not, our most popular answer is Red Rocks by far.
Oh god.
That's like 30. That's like 30 out of the 60 that I've had been Red Rocks. I got to a point where I banned Red Rocks for like 10 podcasts because I was like, it's been too popular. I'm not gonna, you know. And then Madison Square Garden's another huge one. But for me personally, Slane Castle in Ireland would be where I want to perform.
Yeah,
I've seen so many shows there where I was like, okay, yeah, I definitely need to go there. So now we get to the real nitty gritty. What is a guilty pleasure song that you enjoy?
Ooh, oh, well. Oh man, let me think about that for a second. Well, okay, this isn't even a guilty pleasure, but I really like Demi Lovato.
Ooh.
So, Sorry Not Sorry is a jam, and I love that song. And I also, I mean, I like these days, I really like pop music, so it's not even really a guilty pleasure. I'll take that to the grave, man. Like,
hey,
I'll get shit for that for days, but I don't even care.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, yeah, for me personally, some Taylor Swift songs too. I mean,
I love T Swift.
I mean, it's one of those things where I know she's kind of in the thing where it's kind of like, it's either a love or hate thing where like people will love that you like her or they might hate you for the like, but it's, yeah, she has some good songs. I am willing to admit that. But now our most controversial question is,
oh yes.
Now I have to mention ahead of time that you are not killing this person, but if you had the all-knowing power to make it so that a musician had never produced any records at all, they're still alive. Let's just say that maybe they just chose to be a plumber, or they chose to do some other profession. But if you had the power to make it so that they didn't perform any music and their music career never existed, who would you do that to?
Oh God. Oh man. Oh man. Oh man. Oh man, that's tough. I would say Nickelback, but I loved them when I was a kid. Oh, ooh, oh God, oh man, hold on, this is gonna be a sec.
No worries.
Okay, this is going to be kind of controversial, and I liked Stricken when I was a kid, but probably Disturbed.
Ooh.
It might be controversial. I don't know. I just never could get into them. It was just like, that's like the one band that everybody loved except me. I just couldn't do it. And then like Trivium was one of the first metalcore bands I ever got into. But as soon as David Draymond started producing them, I just stopped liking what they made just instantly. Yeah. And it's like, he just ruined Trivium for me. And then, I mean, they've kind of come back. They're kind of different now, but, oof, yeah, Disturbed. Don't kill me, please. Nobody. Yeah.
Oh no, believe me. Like, I honestly never got into that type of music. Like, since I was raised kind of like the old like old classic rock kind of thing. But like, yeah. I mean, the most popular answer that we get is Justin Bieber by far, and then we get.
I kind of like Justin Bieber though.
He has some good songs. Yeah, I'll admit he has a few good songs, and then we also get Nickelback obviously. But like, I was one of those people too where I heard How You Remind Me, and then I liked that one song, but everything else in Nickelback I was like, all right. But they hit gold with that one. that one. I'll admit it. They hit gold with that one song. But I mean, it's also got to the point where so many people hate Nickelback who've never even heard them play. Where just because
they're a meme.
It's just because I know. Just because it's so cool to hate Nickelback for some reason that it got to a point where it just became acceptable. But now, going off the questionnaire segment, I always sort of like to ask this. When it comes to, in your opinion, what a successful song is there a specific formula that you like to put down for a song in order to make it seem good to you? Is there a certain way that you like to sort of make a song that makes it good?
That's a good question too. So as an instrumental band, I mean, you kind of have a tricky balance between writing something that's memorable and at the same time writing something that's like technical enough to be taken seriously as an instrumental band. Because I mean, you can write a really good song, but like if it doesn't just have the depth and the composition that people would be looking for in an instrumental band, I feel like they don't really take you as seriously, because they could just be like, oh yeah, that guitar player, he's all right, but these guys are way better. So naturally, when it comes to writing songs, what I really try to balance is like technicality with like melodic, memorable, hooky things. But aside from that, I think there's no one way to make a good song. It's you'll get great songs that have no repetition at all because that's the story that they tell. And there are other songs where repetition is key to being like stuck in people's heads. So it really just comes down to each song to me. Some songs have a lot of repetition, some songs don't. Some songs have a definitive chorus, some songs don't. Everyone approaches it differently, and I just kind of go with it as it goes along. So,
and I mean, this is a hard enough question for bands that have lyrics in their songs, but how do you come up with song titles for instrumental songs? Because that can be just a process in and of itself. Like I said, everything's different for every individual fan. It might mean something different, but how do you specifically come up with names for those songs that are instrumental?
Sometimes it's just like how I'm feeling at the time, or something that just kind of sounds cool, or a lot of our song titles have just been inside jokes with the band. So like the next song we're going to release is called More Tigers, just because it sounds cool.
Yeah.
But and to me, I envision like a gladiatory like battle between tigers. I don't know, but it's like for example, that one was a joke because like we noticed that there were a lot of tiger bands. Like there's this band here in Portland called like Tigers or something, and then there's Tigers Jaw, and then there's Good Tiger, and there's like all these tiger bands. So we're just like, we need more tigers. We just named it More Tigers. But a lot of them are just inside jokes, or like we try not to make them too like obviously memey. But it's a little bit there. It's definitely there a little bit.
Because like I gotta say, the one song that really introduced me to instrumental was Cliffs of Dover. That is my favorite instrumental song of all time. But it's like you would never think that that song would be anything about the Cliffs of Dover when you first listened to it. So that was one of those songs where I was like, really, you can just name songs whatever you want, then, and just sort of have it be like instrumental. So that's really, really awesome.
That's the great thing, yeah.
Oh yeah. So and when it comes down, also you also said that you guys are planning on maybe having lyrics in some of your songs. When you guys are thinking about that, how much of the lyrics do you want to sort of represent? Do you sort of maybe want just a few words in the song, or do you want like an actual singer guy that sings a lot of it? What is your guys' thoughts on that?
We're actually kind of juggling a couple ideas with that. So I'm in another group. It's still just kind of taking off, but it's basically just with the drummer from my band, and then my girlfriend, she sings, and then we're just kind of making this like kind of poppy thing. And so we're just kind of going to move her over and just do some songs with Susano. And we're kind of juggling a couple ideas with that, because we were either going to do something that Polyphia did on their newest album, coincidentally, is having an instrumental song and then you have lyrics for the choruses, or we're also either going to do that, or we're just going to release like instrumental songs and then have vocals over the whole thing and just have a separate version. That way it's not like you have all these prog dudes who are just like, why'd you add vocals? You guys are selling out. You still have the other version, so they can't get too mad at you.
Yeah.
But
so do I hear the formings of a super group maybe? You're going to maybe combine the two bands a little bit?
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
And also, I got to ask, how is that also having a girlfriend in the band? Because we've had husbands and wives in the same band. Do you ever find that sort of tricky to sort of balance, because you can't, bands are going to get into fights and whatever, and you're going to get into fights with your girlfriend. Has that been a struggle for you at all?
Fortunately, my other band, it's called the Arbour. It's a really laid back project because like Susano is like my main emphasis. So it's like we don't really pressure ourselves to do a lot because it's like, oh, we'll come out with an EP in like 6 months. Not a big deal. If it was like a thing where we were actually pushing for it, then I would be a little bit more concerned. But and then the nice thing is that if she sings on Susano, it's like we have all these versions, and it's not to say it's gonna. That's not gonna say I'm trying to do a backup kind of deal. Or anything. That's not what I mean at all. But I just you kind of have to keep those kinds of things separate, in my opinion, as much as you can.
Absolutely, and that's just in and of itself, that's a hard thing. But absolutely, like I said, and you guys, Susano, go and look these guys up. Go and look up their music video first of all. And are you guys currently like? I know you said you guys are having a song coming up. Are you guys working on maybe an EP or what's the process in that?
Yes, sir. We're doing one more song, and then we could expect a Susano EP in 2019.
2019. Well, keep me posted. I'll love to plug that. And are there any shows that you guys are planning on doing, or are you guys just sort of still in sort of the recording process?
We're still kind of in the recording process. We should have another single up here in the next month or so. So,
well, let me know. Just send me a message on Facebook or whatever when you have that, and I give it a plug on here. And again, speaking of plugs, I have the CD here of the band Dream Eternal Bliss. I had them on the show. Their album Picture Glass is here. They sent it to me, and I really, really appreciate it. Everyone go check out Dream Eternal Bliss, Picture Glass. Highly, highly recommend it. They're a bunch of great guys as well. But again, you guys, Bret, thank you so much for coming on the show. And do you have anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up? Any bands in the local area?
I'd like to give a shout out to my boys in Susano.
Shout out to jazz flute players.
Jazz flute players out there. Ron Burgundy. I mean, we got a few friends here in Salem. The dudes from Wild Eye are great. Stand Trial. So. Absolutely.
And again, you guys, check out Susano. I'll leave a link down below for their awesome music video. Check out also Two Naive Musicians. I highly, highly recommend you go and check out these podcasts. I mean, podcasting it's so much fun for me. And I mean, just having a podcast where they talk more about the music industry. Absolutely love it. Links down below. And again, you guys, Bret, thank you so much for coming on. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the Spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.